In the movie Proof, you meet some familiar actors earlier in their career. I'm sure you noticed Russell Crowe. This was the second feature film that he made. He was already a very charming and very difficult young man. And we've already seen the man who plays Martin, the blind man, in The Lord of the Rings, where he played Elrond, the king of the elves. Those of you who've seen the Matrix films will remember Hugo Weaving as well. I'd like to start today by showing a small section of the movie. Let me just remind you where this fits in. Andy, rather unfocused young man, he describes himself at one place in the movie as a black sheep, is working as a busboy at an Italian restaurant when he meets a blind man, Martin, when Martin inadvertently injures a cat that Andy's been feeding in a back alley. After they get to know each other, they enjoy each other's company. Martin, rather unusually for a blind man, is a photographer, and he asks Andy to help him in that endeavor, not, as you might have expected, by framing the pictures, but rather by describing the photographs themselves. Andy asks Martin if he's ever had movies described to him. He's a photographer, and he figures he might be interested in that. They decide to give Martin a taste for the cinema, as Martin describes it in his rather highbrow way. They don't go to such a highbrow movie. They go to a drive-in slasher flick. It's a real movie called Blood Moon that never made it out of Australia and I think went straight to videotape. At the drive-in, this is number 12 on the movie summary, they have a variety of misadventures when Andy goes off to the concession stand where he memorably asks the girl working there what kind of food she thinks would be good for blind people. Martin, in the meantime, without Andy there to describe to him what's going on, starts to rather absent-mindedly explore the car, of course with his fingers, the way that he sees things. And in a rather unfortunate incident, without knowing what he's doing, he holds up a package of condoms that the man in the car next to him in the drive-in takes to be an obscene invitation. A fight ensues, and Andy and Martin need to beat a quick retreat from the drive-in. That's the scene that we'll be looking at.
Oh, great. I was just around the bloody police. Put your hands on the wheel.
Hey! Pull over!
Nod. Get your feet away from the brake. Oh, fuck, I'm bleeding.
You hurt?
Oh! Oh, shit!
Bloody beauty. 5 minutes before knock-off.
Oh, that's it, we're gone now.
My eyes. I can't see! I can't see!
I think he's hit his head on the steering wheel. I think it's dislodged his brain.
You're natural, huh? I mean, that's what.
Thanks, nurse. Now, Andy, I've got bad news, actually. Your friend Martin is, well, the doctors are still looking at him, but looks like he's been blinded.
Blinded?
Shit. You'll be all right?
Yes. Thank you. Sir.
Brian.
Right.
You've been blind all your life.
I know.
What were you doing driving a car?
I forgot.
I forgot.
Brian.
They're blue. Your eyes.
Yes.
Why do you hide them?
Well, they're not real eyes, just defective tissue. Look into my eyes, but they won't look back.
What colour are your eyes?
Green. Blue's better than green.
Would you like to come in? For some tea? Or some port?
Yeah, I would. How do you know when to stop?
The sound.
Fucking amazing.
There you are.
Thanks. Who's that in the photograph?
Which photograph?
The old one on the mantelpiece.
Oh. How'd you know it's old?
Looks old. It's black and white. The lady in it's got old-fashioned clothes on. Is that your mum?
Yes.
Is the kid you?
I was supposed to.
Never seen your own mum. You want me to describe it to you?
All right.
She doesn't look like you.
Oh, really? People always said she did.
Nah, they're probably just saying that. Looks like, the two of you are in a park. You're sitting down, she's got her arms around you. You're sort of looking away. She's got long white fingers, like a statue, you know? She looks young, maybe 28, 29. Got long dark hair, it's falling around her shoulders. She's very pale. And you? You're covered with freckles and your hair's short.
She always cut it herself. Never went to a barber. Never went out with my mother at all. She was embarrassed by me, you see. She always wanted an ordinary child that she could do ordinary things with. And she got me. Thank you. One day I might show you a photograph. It was the first one I ever took. I was 10. It's not much of a photograph, really. It's just a garden that was visible through one of the windows in our flat. But it's the most important photograph I've ever taken. Every morning and every afternoon, my mother would describe this garden to me. I saw the seasons come and go through her eyes. I used to question her so thoroughly, always trying to catch her in a lie. I never did. But by taking the photo, I knew that I could, one day.
Why would your mother lie to you?
To punish me for being blind.
Does it really matter if she lied to you about some garden?
Yes. It was my world.
When Martin answers the doctor's question of what he was doing driving a car, and he says that he forgot that he was blind, there's more to that than simply the good joke. For Martin, being blind means that he's always seeking for an ocular proof that he'll never obtain. His blindness has destroyed his ability to trust. For Martin to forget his blindness means not only that he was trying to drive a car, but also that he's let Andy become his friend. Martin is always testing everybody. He is always looking for evidence. This, of course, is an unnatural way for a human being to live. It is not so much that Martin is blind. It's that his demand for evidence is inhuman, that makes him the man that he is. It helps to account for the specific cruelty that he inflicts on Celia, the way that he refuses to let her help him or to love him. He can stand everything but being pitied. But he interprets every act of friendship or love as itself an act of pity. Martin takes this physical weakness of his eyes, his inability to see, as an occasion for doubting everything in his life. Those of you who happen to hear the gospel reading just this weekend heard another famous story about somebody who demanded evidence, the story of doubting Thomas. When his friends told him, "We saw Jesus' body, we saw the real thing," he says, "I'll believe that as soon as I can put my hands into his wounds." And when, lo and behold, Jesus comes back and says, Thomas, go ahead. Put your fingers into the holes in my hands. Probe the wound in my side. What doubting Thomas realizes is that his doubt wasn't caused by a lack of evidence. Because when he says, my Lord and my God, in response, it's not because he reached out and touched Jesus. He doesn't check it out first and say, well, I guess after all you really are Jesus. Instead, a fearfulness to believe something has passed away from him. And in light of that change in orientation or attitude, leaving behind that fearfulness or overcoming it, Thomas now accepts, without asking for the evidence he had previously demanded, that Jesus is there with him again. One of the more striking aspects of the story of doubting Thomas is that Jesus is there not as a hologram or as a soul or as a disembodied spirit. He's there in a glorified body, whatever that might be. We don't know a lot about glorified bodies. We know that they eat fish, as we see Jesus do on the shore in another of the stories after his resurrection. And we know that they can walk through walls. But we know one other very curious thing about glorified bodies. Bodies of the sort that I suppose Christians believe they'll have after the resurrection of the dead. We know that the things that seem to be wounds now in a glorified body are signs. Jesus' glorified body still had the wounds. The wounds were not, as they must have seemed at the time, imperfections. Martin's blindness is interpreted by him as making him unlovable. I do not think the movie intends us to accept Martin's interpretation of his mother. Martin interprets his mother as not loving him because of his blindness, because he is full of fearfulness that he is unlovable. It's his feeling that he's unlovable that makes him blind to other people's love. He would rather interpret his mother as not loving him, as manipulating him, than to have to rely on her love. So his constant search for evidence is also a search for a kind of self-reliance, for a way of not depending on other people. So that what makes Martin distinctive is not so much that his eyes see or don't see, it's that he's a kind of monster of self-sufficiency, and therefore unable to accept love from other people. The fact that this comes to us as a physical deformity, you might say, is accidental to the story. The demand for ocular proof, Othello's demand, appears in this movie as another exploration of the way that the child is father to the man. Something that we saw, for example, in The Hairdresser's Husband. The way that a certain childhood fearfulness Or, in the case of Antoine, a certain childhood optimism can permeate everything in our adult lives, can change the ways in which we love. It's a part of the theme of this particular movie. Now, from the inside, that is, to Martin, his suspicions and his doubts seem the most natural things in the world. But to everybody else, they seem lunatic, impossible. But that's the way it is with our own blindnesses. If we would prefer not to have to trust other people, if we would preserve our sense of our own self-sufficiency, it will often enough be at the cost of our trust of others. We see at the end of the movie Martin coming to terms with his lack of trustfulness. He's no longer willing to preserve the helpfulness of Celia at the cost of holding off her love. He does not accept her love, and so he fires her. He no longer employs her. Remember that when Martin first asks Andy to describe his pictures to him, he offers to pay Andy to do that, and Andy says, "No way." And Martin thinks that Andy means, "No, I won't describe the pictures for you." But of course what Andy meant is, I would never take money for doing something that's just an act of friendliness. So Martin tries to use monetary relationships to hold people at arm's length, to make that relationship controllable, to squeeze all the gratitude out of it. This moved from friendliness to contract as an instrument of control, a way of introducing a kind of false clarity into a relationship, is a theme that we remember from the very first thing that we saw in this course, the movie Exotica. So we see brought together in Martin a number of interesting features that we've seen distributed through some of the other movies and texts that we've been looking at. But they're brought home here in a physical embodiment. An embodiment that looks like a wound, but turns out to be a sign. It's not, after all, so very difficult for all of us to be blind. And it's only when we let a friend into our lives that we forget that blindness. The accomplishment of this movie is not that it makes Martin a likable person, although for me, I must say by the end, there is something about him very likable. It's that he makes him a person we don't see anymore as different from us. We cannot write him off as, well, that's what it's like if you have a particular physical handicap. The handicap that he has is not primarily a physical one. The way that the movie works on us is to make us enter into Martin's own experience of the world, and therefore to break down our sense of his difference from us. In this movie, the sound is as important as the pictures. The director, Jocelyn Moorhouse, has given us some scenes where the sound is played up so that our experience of the scene comes through the distinctive sounds going on, say, in Martin's apartment, when he hears the drip of a shower or when he hears the flick of a cigarette ash. By inviting us as moviegoers to have an experience like that of Martin, the director has tried to make the thoughtfulness of the movie not a study in our pity for Martin, but instead a study of the way that Martin's physical blindness can show us something about our own blindness in the course of love. When doubting Thomas overcame his doubts, he didn't overcome his doubts because Jesus gave him new evidence. He overcame his doubts because now he was ready to take up a certain kind of cross, a certain kind of mission or a call. It might be that for all of us, to get to the point of really loving somebody else, we too have to accept something that looks like a vocation, like a vocalization, like a call. And that kind of acceptance is bound to look, from the point of view of our previous self, like a leap into the dark without enough evidence. But when it comes to love, every time we ask for evidence, we should also interrogate our fears. We'll take up this question in the last speech of the symposium on Wednesday. See you then.